Hello and welcome everyone out there in Gameland. My name is Gregory, this is 1 in 20 D&D, and welcome to DnDaily number 44. I have a pretty big announcement today. It's not even for me, but it's something that caught my attention I think is really amazing. You know, I almost feel like I should be calling this RPG Daily or something like that, because I do talk about other games besides just Dungeons and Dragons. And I play them, and honestly, some of the most popular videos on my channel here are some of my Car Wars battles and Battletech games and so forth, Battletech RPG games and such. And that's cool, and I absolutely love D&D, which is why I play and talk mostly about D&D, but there's so many fantastic RPGs out there, like Cyberpunk, and as I mentioned, Car Wars, Battletech RPG, there's Vampire the Masquerade, there's millions of them, well, not millions, but there are hundreds of them out there that you can go and check out. There have been through the years, and there's even like one-page RPGs is kind of a popular thing that's happening right now, which is amazing. Like if you've watched the Honey Heist videos that the folks over at Critical Role put out there for us, which are super entertaining and things like that, where there's these very basic, simple, easy to run, easy to play role-playing games. They're all over there. Go check them out. I think they're all amazing, and if you find some cool ones, let me know what you find. I'm always open to suggestions. Here's what I'm excited about, and the announcement that I wanted to share. I found out about this yesterday, and I just think it's super awesome. Steve Jackson Games has a Kickstarter going on right now for the next like 33 hours or something like this, so you have to jump on this right away. They're releasing a Kickstarter that has pocket box games of the 80s. So there's these really cool, like, little simple game book boxes that you can get that have some fantastic 80s art from them, and they're the games that Steve Jackson's studios put out back in the 80s, like Car Wars and Dual Track and GURPS, and well, he didn't put out GURPS, but there's an adaptation for GURPS and Ogre, and there's these other great games that Steve Jackson put out there in the 80s. And they're doing this amazing Kickstarter where you can get some of these old titles and these old games and be able to play them. Or maybe if you missed out, like if you have a good selection of the Car Wars stuff, maybe you missed one or two of the selections, and this is maybe a great way for you to pick up some of those hard to find modules and so forth. So I'm going to put a link for that Kickstarter in the information of this video below. You can find that there. To get to it quickly, go and back them. They're already, so they were looking for 50,000 in pledges. They're already over $200,000 in pledges, with like 1,500 plus people committed to this quick Kickstarter drive. That is awesome. Here's what I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. Steve Jackson Games has had on their website for many years, not many years, I apologize, for many months, I've been checking, I've been looking, they've had working on, I think it's release 8 of Car Wars, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I believe, I'm praying that they're previewing, or maybe they're doing this Kickstarter in order to start getting some awareness and getting some interest, and maybe this is a premonition or preview of things to come, and that we'll actually have that new version of Car Wars coming out sometime soon. I'm hoping. I love all Steve Jackson stuff. Their games are just great. You know, there's just some cool stuff out there. Go check their stuff out. You probably know about it already. Munchkins, there's all the, there's just some fun stuff that they do, and most of it's light-hearted, silly stuff, and just super fun to play. So go check it out. If you're interested, like, what's Car Wars, what's that all about, check out some of my videos. Our videos are slightly different because we homebrew it a little bit. We use sort of our own, we've massaged, or Brett, our GM, has massaged the rules a little bit to fit our play style and kind of the pace of the game we want. Also, lately we're playing on Roll20 online, so in order to make it work easily on a virtual tabletop, we've adapted it. So, but it's still basically the same game. It's still essentially Car Wars with the same like weapons and cars and basically the same functionality. So go check it out. We have tons of fun. We're a bunch of goofballs, I gotta tell you, and just, you know, cracking jokes and bagging on each other the whole time and talking smack and all that fun stuff. So that's Car Wars, Steve Jackins Games. Link in the information below. On another note about more about D&D, we had a good session last night, and at the same time, it ended up becoming sort of a shortened session because, sort of as we did yesterday, we had a talk as a group again, and here's why. Our Wednesday night games have been coming. We've been facing some challenges because there are 4 of us that are super consistent, show up every week or almost every week. You know, we all have lives, so there are times when we don't. However, most of the time, there are 4 of us that are there consistently. We also have 3 other players that are sort of come and go, busy lifestyles and what have you. A 5th is actually pretty consistent as well. They're, you know, 50 to 75% of the time. And so it's presented, oh, I can talk, I promise. It has presented this challenge for us in the sense that we want to have a game, a weekly game, where we sit down and play D&D, and we even went as far as creating 2 separate campaigns that are we're sort of running simultaneously. I'm running one, I've talked about this before, our Kingdom of Agic, which is essentially the Princes of the Apocalypse, and I've massaged it slightly. They're not actually in the Desert Valley, and they're in a different part of Faerun or something, a different kingdom, because there's other things going on behind the scenes that I'm just tying in the module of the Princes of the Apocalypse into what I had started. We also have restarted the Lost Mines of Phandelver for us, and we're doing this as slightly different than you might typically do that starter set, because the starter set's intended for like a group of good individuals, you know, good, just, noble, like, you know, heroic individuals, and we're doing it more as these kind of like mercenary, out for themselves kind of group where we have some slightly darker individuals in the party. So it's a fun game so far. But here's the trouble. We don't have the same people showing up every week. So I presented it to my, you know, fellow players and gamers. I'm like, hey guys, look, we all want to play. I actually started the conversation because I was concerned that they might be not happy with the pace of the game I've been running for them. Part of the Princes of the Apocalypse can be this very dungeon crawl feeling section where you're underground in this huge complex for an extended period of time. And my concern was that they weren't getting enough role play. They you know, dungeon crawls are great for some, they're not so interesting for others. I personally love exploration, I love combat, I love dungeon crawls. I also am trying to, you know, make sure everybody else at the table, it's virtual, but everybody else at the table is having a good time too. So I needed to have this conversation with them, and my thought was, for a section of the adventure, we would do, in order to sort of move the story along, we would do it as a skill test, skill check kind of section, rather than a actual room by room progression. And the feedback I got was that no, they didn't want to do that because so much of the game comes out in those moments of how do you deal with these obstacles, and how do you deal with this slugging slurry of combat, and it was so cool. It was really good feedback. So I guess the takeaway that I have is that they're getting enough role play between the few NPCs and monsters that they do encounter, and within the party, there's enough roleplay happening that they're satisfied with that. They like the development of their characters through this challenge that they're facing. There's this huge evil in the world that they've all decided they're going to deal with, and they said, like I said, there's other options. You can go do other stuff, like go back to the surface, resupply, or go check out these other sort of threads that I've presented. And they basically all said the same thing, is like, no, that doesn't feel right. We want to stick this through and finish this. And I'm stoked. I think it's amazing, because it was this sort of like, they weren't really role-playing, it was just the players talking, but they were absolutely considering the mindset, I guess, or the personality of their character and what their character would actually be interested in doing. And what they said was, they're cool with doing the sort of vignettes of like a skill challenge, and it feels like the best times to use those are when you're moving from you're segueing from one part of the story to another. You're moving from one city to another city. You're moving, there's a chase. You have to very quickly get somewhere or chase someone or something like that. So it was really, really powerful feedback. They didn't want to skim over some of the more meat of the story, I guess. It's meat of the dungeon, let's call it. They were more interested in that than they were of moving forward. It felt like they didn't want to hit fast forward, and I was super stoked to hear that, because I feel like on some level it means like I'm doing my job, I'm making the game engaging enough that they're still interested in it. And what we finally decided was that since it's always the four of us pretty consistently, and then our other players jump in when they're available. Again, one is pretty regular and we love having him. So what we're going to do is, two of the characters we're going to sort of step out of the story for now. The fourth player character, that would be 4 plus me, the DM, we're going to have him along as an NPC when he's not available. When he's with us, he's going to play the game like usual. And that's most of the time. And if one of the others shows up, then we're going to play our Lost Mines game, our side trek, which gives me a chance to play as a player instead of run. And that's cool. So it was all about compromise, and it was all about discussion and communication. And that's what it took. I've mentioned this before. I'm going to keep talking about it. I know it's going to be the same story, because that's what works. And that's the necessity of having a functioning, fun, and long-term campaign. You got to talk with each other. If you're friends, you got to talk. You got to figure this out, and it just makes the whole game experience smoother. So now I'm stoked, because next week they're going to be back in the temple and in the dealing with eventually another Prince of the Apocalypse, and I can't wait till they get there. So that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in. Check out Steve Jackson Games. Check out their CarWars, their Pocket Box Kickstarter. One more time, the link is in the information below. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you at a table someday, and keep rolling 20s.